The first question is, what advice can you give if church has been a place that has wounded you?
Listen to the last sermon again. I think it's important to separate the church from Christ. And I know that theologically you can get into a lot of different quagmire about that, but I think in the midst of all of the conflict that you see in church, there's people that are struggling. I think you have to come back to the relationship with Jesus Christ and who he is and what he has done in our life and embrace that. And that's the essence of it in my mind.
Yeah, Todd or Becky, do you have any thoughts on that? Or
I feel like that was good.
That was great. Thank you for that. Thanks for sharing that. The next question we have is going to go to Becky. What do I do if my group of friends mostly uses inappropriate humor or humor that isolates or tears others down?
Very long question. Yeah, there's a lot there. So there's a lot of psychology studies on the use of negative humor and how sarcasm actually shortens your life. Wow. So I'm sorry to everyone in this room, because all of our lives are probably just got 20 years shaved off. It's hopeful. I kind of mentioned before that humor can definitely be something that we shame others with, kind of for our own pleasure. And I would probably just step back and realize that's something that definitely like God did not design. That humor is a form of connection. So how can you form a connection with a person if you're hurting them? And that's not a form of connection. You're perverting what God created to teach us empathy and to teach us to see one another and to relate to one another and to be in community with one another for some type of selfish and hurtful means to get what you want. So, I would probably reevaluate your friend group because there's some probably other issues that are going on there. Don't want to tell you how to live your life or anything, but it could be an indicator of something that is much deeper.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. The next question we got is for Dr. Pickett, TEEPS, as we call in spiritual development. And I feel like now we've all been saying it, so I feel like everyone's going to be welcome to say that as well. How can you love your neighbor when you are in a conflict and they are attacking you personally?
That's hard. I think the thing that I do most immediately, besides freak out, someone's attacking me, once I calm down, take a few breaths, I kind of try to figure that, I wonder, I become curious. I both want to open to the fact that I may have done something, but I also want to open to the fact that they may have had a hard day. So obviously it depends on the kind of attack it is. I know that when I get irritated at people around me or members of my family, I know it's because I have brought home something that is bugging me. Maybe there was a failure at work or some way I'm not feeling good about myself. So I want to kind of immediately develop a little bit of sympathy and compassion for what may be going on in this person's life. So I think I'm simultaneously open. At my best, Lord, I'm willing to hear truth spoken about me. Christians should live in the truth of themselves. Because we are accepted by God, we can live in the truth of ourselves. I don't have to live a defensive life. And that may calm me down enough to wonder what is going on in this person's life. Both those require humility, and I can't say enough about the virtue of humility in conflict. That is probably the queen of the virtues, is to be open to the truth of myself, and in my non-defensiveness now wonder what is going on with this person. So that's me at my best. At my worst, I backpedal, defend myself, stop listening, stop wondering. Lord have mercy on me.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Next question goes to Reverend Hughes. How does a church start connecting with the community what should be the first steps?
First of all, I think you have to be responsive to what's going on in the community. You really need to understand, it's building the relationship. So I think it's a position of saying, I'm going to respond to what's going on in my community. I'm going to build relationships. And I think from there it moves toward redemptive opportunities. But more than anything, it's really getting people that can learn to listen to the various segments of the community, understand what's happening. That requires the demographic study. That requires talking to a lot of different folks that are out there. But once you get that sense, you can get that understanding of what's going on in the community. You can have a whole different posture on how to move forward.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. For Becky, we have this question that says, what does the kind of empathy you talked about look like practically?
Oh, sorry, that got significantly louder. I guess for me, this past year has been learning what empathy looks like in my own personal life. Obviously, it's my personal life. I think we forget to really try to understand the other side of the story, not just like listening to what they have to say. And I forgot to mention that I'm a terrible listener. And I really need to get better at it. Because I'm always thinking of like what I would contribute to the conversation, instead of just taking back and listening to a person as they bare their soul. One of my favorite things to hear from somebody is, I've never told this to anyone before. And I hope and I pray that you hear that all the time from people, because you're a safe person. I think empathy looks a lot like safety. Someone that can come to you and sit with you and know that every story you share with them is heard, is seen, and that you're gonna walk through whatever they're going through in their life, because it's become a part of your own, because that's how much you care for them. Even though you can't feel the pain or understand exactly what their mindset is behind it, like, don't say no. You can't continue to deny somebody their pain and their sorrow and their story. Sorry, this voice thing is very messy. So I would say empathy in a very, very practical way is becoming a person that learns your own story and then finding connection points with other people so that you become a person of safety.
Oh, wasn't sure if you were going to say something. Becky, thank you for that. That was very practical and insightful. For Dr. Pickett, what is the right way to pray when you are in conflict with someone?
I'm a big honest prayer guy. I just think conflict, I don't know about you, for me, I came from, the Picketts are like a very diplomatic family, which means we're repressed, right? We hate conflict. I've got little invisible antennae. When I see a conflict coming, I go in the other direction. So conflict brings up a lot of stuff for me. It kind of sends my soul into chaos. And so, the first thing I do is the first thing I need to do is just talk with the Lord. I need to kind of, what does Anne Lamott say? The two most common prayers are, Lord, help me, help me, help me, and then thank you. I'm the Lord, help me, help me, help me. So immediately for me, it's just, gosh, what is this conflict bringing up for me? Because like I said before, whatever's in my heart, it's going to come out. My life is just going to flow from it. So the first thing I want to do is just, Lord, what is this dredging up in me? Is it fear? Lord, what do I fear? Is it anger? Or what am I angry at? I think the psalmist is a great example. The psalmist, you feel like you're reading someone's diary of prayer. Now, the interesting thing, of course, is that the Hebrews, this was their Sunday morning prayer book. The uncertainty, the insecurity, the anger, the fear you hear in the Psalms, the Hebrews would sing this on Sunday morning because they wanted to get people used to being this honest with God. And so I think that's the first thing I do is at Psalm 139, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxious thoughts. And then, Lord, see if there's any hurtful way in me, because I know I'm going to react on those anxious thoughts. And so the prayer of honesty is so valuable, because now Jesus can kind of work with me before I move into conflict. That's my first go-to prayer. And then based on the conflict, there'll be lots of prayers for that person and for myself. And of course, Lord, let the peace of Christ rule in me would be my prayer.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pickett. Yeah, that was cool. For Reverend Hughes, the question is, how can we create a culture in the church that deals with conflict in a way that honors Christ?
I think you have to be very honest with who you are. Like, I was just thinking about what he said, and I thought, my prayer is usually, Lord, don't let me punch them. Because I get really angry sometimes, and I want, yeah, good move. Churches sometimes aren't safe, but it really starts with people being safe. And when there's that kind of a conflict in a church, you have to be able to, I think, both pray about that. There's a spiritual battle that's going on. But I think you have to be able to be very authentic in relationships and be able to talk through things. Sometimes we avoid the conflict because we don't want it, right? So we stay away from it when we really need to press into that. And the safety and the peace happens after we work through that. So I think sometimes, more often than not, to create that safety, we have to be able to embrace the conflict and to really have that opportunity to be authentic with one another.
Thank you. Now, this is a question for the whole panel. Whoa. Hey-oh. That means you all have to answer, Kay. Okay. So the question is, wait for it. I lost my place. 1 second. I know. Do you think the bigger screen, it would help you to see stuff? Seriously, wow. I just lost. Oh, okay. Here we go. About the skit. What do you think we can do to avoid falling into the Christian stereotype? Ooh, loaded.
Man, I feel like a lot of pressure because I don't want to say anything terrible. So I will use a personal example because that's safe. For me, it was stepping out into the world that I wasn't used to and making sure I had a lot of faithful friends beside me to do it. I live in downtown Los Angeles, right next to Union Station. And it is very different than Biola. And I've gotten to know the Arts District area, and I've become friends with a lot of people that are lived on Skid Row for 25 years. And they're kind of my new family. And that's what taught me that my education here and the things that I learned are so important. And the people that I surround myself with, the values that they have, and the mindsets that they have are so important, because I could get lost and eaten up in downtown Los Angeles. But it is so good for me to be there, for me to be challenged, for me to see that all of those Christian cliches that we were ever given do not make sense to anyone outside this room. And so it allows me to see people and see them where they're at, and they can help me and feed into me. And hopefully we build this long relationship of just being family, I guess, if that makes sense.
You know, what you, even as you talk about the poor, I think of weakness in general. The skit seemed to me in part to be about, obviously it's about superficiality, you know, in our kind of daily relationships, trying to avoid intimacy. And you wonder, since we have such a strong need for intimacy, why would we want to avoid it so much? And you know, again, I can mostly speak for myself, but I think we are embarrassed about weakness. I think we're embarrassed. I mean, when somebody asks me, how are you doing? I basically have the two choices. I could say, hey, I'm fine, how are you doing? Or I could, on some days, break down and cry. I mean, you know, those are kind of my two poles, you know, it's kind of like, and I want to break down and cry, and if I start talking, it'll be a downer maybe on some days, and but I think there's a culture of embarrassment. I mean, and you guys are in a tough position as people who are in this generation, and especially as connected as you are to media, because you have a chance to compare yourself 24 hours a day to the supposed best of the best. All right, the people who are famous, who have done startups when they're 25, who have homes when they're 28, who are supposedly in these great jobs. I mean, you have to compare yourself to these supposed successful people 24 hours, and probably you feel like, gosh, what am I doing? I should be this. So it's embarrassing to say, in response to how are you doing, it's like, I don't know if I'm doing that great. I don't know if I'm where I want to be. I'm a little ashamed. And it just, so I think maybe that's what the skit made me think about, is we're embarrassed by weakness, which is so funny because Paul in 2 Corinthians 12 says, I'm not embarrassed by my weakness, because it's in my weakness that I will feel the strength of Christ, the love of Christ. I think we're embarrassed to be needy. And, but according to the scriptures, that is the beginning, the foundation of our life with God. So I recognized the scenario, and it made me think of how embarrassed I am of the very thing that God is asking me to open to him. So.
Yeah. Very good.
And just briefly from that.
The problem with stereotypes is they're partially true. But the good thing is we get to redefine that in every generation. And every interaction that we have with people, if we can be authentic and realize that our own brokenness, I think is critical. And the fact that we really do need one another. And I love the fact that you could surprise people by being a Christ follower, not a traditional Christian. You're different than everybody else. I love that. That's what we get to do every day.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.